Get ready for a deep dive into the life of, well, how should I put this? A true Renaissance man from 19th century Brazil, Francisco Lete de Bittencourt Sampaio. Yeah, his name's a mouthful, but trust me, his story is anything but dusty history. We're talking about someone who was involved in law, poetry, politics, you name it. And to top it all off, he was a leading figure in the early days of the Brazilian Spiritist movement.
You hit the nail on the head. It's that blend of passions that makes Bittencourt Sampaio so captivating. His life story isn't just a biography, it's a window into a period of immense change in Brazil. We're going to use two sources, his Wikipedia page and a bio from a Spiritist center. And together, they're going to help us uncover how his multiple passions reflect those changes happening all around him.
Exactly. We're talking about a time when Brazil was transitioning from an empire to a republic. Plus, new ideas like Spiritism were taking root. Talk about a time of upheaval. So let's start at the beginning. Bittencourt Sampaio was born in 1834 in Laranjeiras, Sergipe. And like many ambitious young men of his time, he set his sights on law. He started his studies at the prestigious Faculdade de Direito do Recife. I mean, that's kind of like their version of Harvard Law School, right?
Pretty much, yeah. A real breeding ground for
Yeah.
the legal minds of Brazil. Though, interestingly enough, he didn't actually finish his degree there. He ended up at the Faculdade de Direito in São Paulo a few years later. But get this, while he was studying there, he wrote the lyrics for their law school anthem. And, drumroll please, the music was composed by none other than Carlos Gomes, the mega famous Brazilian composer.
Wow, that's a name everyone recognizes. Talk about a claim to fame. I bet most people have no idea one of their favorite composers collaborated with a future Spiritist leader. Makes you wonder. Was this early songwriting just a fun side project or a hint of his broader artistic side?
That's a great question. It's definitely fascinating to think about. And you know what? His creative energy didn't stop there. Later on, he actually teamed up with Gomes again. This time, they created a beautiful modinha called Quem Sabe, which means who knows.
Okay, hold on a sec. What's a modinha?
Oh, good point. Not everyone's familiar with that term. Think of modinha as the pop music of 19th century Brazil, a popular type of sentimental song, usually performed with solo voice and guitar. Very romantic and expressive. And the amazing thing is, Bittencourt Sampaio's Quem Sabe is still performed today.
Wow, so he was a poet, a songwriter, and it looks like he was also involved in journalism, even writing for newspapers during a time of pretty heated political debate.
Absolutely. He had his finger on the pulse of everything that was happening. You can really see how his intellect and his desire to engage with the world went hand in hand. And remember, all of this is happening as Brazil is on the brink of some major political changes.
Right, let's talk about that. Bittencourt Sampaio became a member of the Liberal Party, and he was elected as a deputy, not once but twice. This was during a time when the seeds of republicanism were being sown. The whole country was grappling with its future.
Oh yeah, he was right in the thick of it. And in 1867, he became the president of Espírito Santo. That's basically like being a state governor today. Imagine the drive and ambition it took to rise through the ranks like that.
For sure, it shows his political skills, but I'm curious, do we know how his political views might have influenced his later work in Spiritism? Was there any overlap there?
That's an excellent question, one worth exploring for sure. As his political career progressed, he actually signed the Republican Manifesto of 1870, which officially meant he was switching his allegiance from the empire. This suggests he wasn't afraid of embracing change, both in his personal beliefs and on a national scale.
So we have this lawyer, this poet, this politician, seemingly at the heart of Brazil's transformation. And then there's another layer to his story, his journey into Spiritism. Now, the sources don't pinpoint exactly when or how he got involved, but by 1873, he was already a leading figure in Rio de Janeiro's first Spiritist group, the Grupo Confucio.
Right, and remember, at that time, Spiritism was still relatively new. So for him to be involved so early on shows a real openness to new ideas, even potentially controversial ones. What I find fascinating is that he's drawn to this philosophy while also actively participating in the structures of traditional power.
Yeah, that contrast is really interesting. What could have attracted someone so deeply ingrained in the political and legal worlds to something as seemingly esoteric as Spiritism?
Well, to understand that, I think we need to take a closer look at his contributions to the movement. That's where things get even more intriguing. Bittencourt Sampaio wasn't just attending meetings or dabbling in Spiritism, He was a prominent figure, a leader even. And a big part of that was because of his unique form of mediumship.
Right. The sources mentioned he was a recitista. Now, for those of us who didn't grow up steeped in Spiritist lingo, Can you break down what that means exactly?
It's fascinating stuff, really. A recetista is a medium who, under the influence of spirits, prescribes medical treatments. And in Bittencourt Sampaio's case, we're talking homeopathic remedies. Pretty distinctive, even within the broader world of Spiritism.
Wait, hold on. Spirit-guided healthcare. That sounds wild, even for the 19th century. Was that a common thing back then?
Not exactly mainstream, even in the Spiritist community, no.
Yeah.
But it does highlight how Spiritism, especially in Brazil, often blended with other beliefs and practices. Like homeopathy was gaining traction around that time. It emphasized natural remedies and a body's ability to heal itself.
So maybe for someone like Bittencourt Sampaio, always open to new ideas, Spiritism and homeopathy fit together. Two sides of the same coin, almost.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. But we can't forget, he wasn't just prescribing remedies in his parlor, right? This guy was actively shaping the Spiritist movement in Brazil. In 1876, he founded the Sociedade de Estudos Espíritas Deus, Cristo e Caridade, the Society of Spiritist Studies God, Christ, and Charity, if you don't speak Portuguese.
That's quite a name. But it does suggest a more, I don't know, intellectual, maybe even theological approach to Spiritism. Was that typical at the time?
His approach was definitely interesting. Because remember, Spiritism itself was still evolving. Lots of different interpretations swirling around. Bittencourt Sampaio's group was all about studying the Gospels, but through a Spiritist lens. So blending those traditional Christian teachings with spirit communication and reincarnation.
So not just taking the Bible at face value, but digging into the spiritual layers. I can see how that would appeal to someone like him. Legal mind, always questioning, plus that intellectual curiosity we talked about.
Exactly. And he wasn't alone in this, right? He was also involved with another group called the Grupo Espírita Fraternidade, founded in 1880. These types of groups were crucial to the growth of Spiritism in Brazil.
Were they more like study circles, or did they serve a different function?
Multifaceted, really. People would come together to study the works of Allan Kardec. He's considered the OG of Spiritism, right? And they'd share their experiences with mediumship. Imagine a mix of a book club, a support group, a place for spiritual exploration, real community hubs for those embracing Spiritism.
Got it. So within these groups, Bittencourt Sampaio is not just a participant, he's a leader, a thinker, and an author too, right? He wrote a Divina Epopeia de João Evangelista, the divine epic of John the Evangelist, published in 1882.
And this is where it gets even more interesting, right? We're not talking a pamphlet or a quick essay here. He rewrote the entire Gospel of John in verse.
Wow, talk about ambitious. It's like he channeled his legal mind, his poetic heart, and all those Spiritist beliefs into this massive project. But why the Gospel of John? What resonated with him about that specific text?
That's a great question. You see, the Gospel of John is often seen as the most, mystical, symbolic of the four Gospels. It's all about light, love, the divine nature of Jesus. Makes sense that Bittencourt Sampaio, who is exploring those same realms through Spiritism, would connect with those themes.
And by rewriting it in verse, it's like he's trying to make those deeper spiritual meanings even more accessible.
Exactly. He wasn't just passively accepting traditional interpretations. He was actively engaging with the text, reinterpreting it through Spiritism, even using poetry to express those new understandings.
So this multi-talented guy, lawyer, politician, poet, now adds Spiritist author to his resume, but that's not even the end of his literary journey, is it?
Nope, not by a long shot. And this is where some of those core Spiritist beliefs come into play. Even after Bittencourt Sampaio died in 1895, more of his works were published. But here's the twist. They were attributed to his spirit communicating through mediums.
Wait, posthumous publications? So like channeling, but for writing.
Exactly. Remember, in Spiritism, communication with spirits doesn't end with physical death. It's believed they can still communicate, share their knowledge and insights through mediums. So Bittencourt Sampaio's literary career, in a way, continued even after he was gone.
Wow, the spirit world as a publishing platform. But how did people react to these posthumous works? Did they accept them as genuine?
That's a tricky one. Within the Spiritist community, they were often embraced as evidence of ongoing spirit communication. But outside those circles, well, it was and still is a matter of belief, of interpretation.
It does make you wonder what those writings contained, though. Continuations of his earlier work, new insights into Spiritism.
That would be fascinating to know. Unfortunately, those specific works aren't mentioned in our source material. But the fact that they were published at all shows his lasting impact on the movement. And his legacy doesn't end there. Fast forward to the 20th century, and you find him mentioned in Voltaire. It's a book by Chico Xavier, arguably the most famous figure in Brazilian Spiritism.
Okay, I gotta admit, not super familiar with Chico Xavier. Can you give us a little background?
Sure, Chico Xavier was a psychic medium revered by millions, even today. He's said to have authored over 450 books, all through psychography. That's writing produced through alleged spirit communication. His whole life was about spreading Spiritism and helping others.
Wow, 450 books. That's incredible. So in this book, Bittencourt Sampaio gets a shout out.
More than a shout-out, actually. The spirit speaking through Chico Xavier described Bittencourt Sampaio as overseeing the development of Spiritism from the spirit world. It's a glimpse into how later generations of Spiritists viewed him, almost like a spiritual seal of approval.
It's truly remarkable how this one figure from the 19th century, this lawyer, poet, politician, and spiritist pioneer, his name is still being whispered generations later.
It really speaks to the power of ideas and the enduring influence of those who dare to explore new ways of thinking, new ways of believing. Bittencourt Sampaio might not be a household name, but his impact on Brazilian Spiritism and the culture at large is undeniable.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it, the sheer scope of Bittencourt Sampaio's life, I mean. We've gone from law school anthems to the halls of political power, from romantic modinhas to leading spiritist groups. It's clear he wasn't afraid to explore, to push those boundaries.
What gets me is how his life mirrors this period of intense transformation in Brazil. Politically, socially, everything's changing. He's active during that shift from empire to republic, a time of serious debate and upheaval, right? And at the same time, he's embracing this new spiritual movement, challenging all those traditional religious views.
It's like he embodies that spirit of transition, that willingness to question, to embrace the new. Do you think his involvement in those pivotal political moments could it have influenced his approach to Spiritism?
It's a great question, and I think it's worth considering. His early work with the Liberal Party and then supporting that Republican movement, it points to a forward-thinking mindset, someone who isn't satisfied with the status quo. So maybe that same drive, that same desire for progress and reform drew him to Spiritism, which at the time was pretty radical compared to traditional religious thought.
So maybe Spiritism wasn't just a personal thing for him, but a way to contribute to Brazil's evolution, socially, intellectually, the whole package.
Exactly. And remember, this is all happening as Brazil is modernizing, society is rapidly changing, the country's trying to define its identity, figure out what it means to be Brazilian. And within all that, you have Bittencourt Sampaio. He's not just navigating these changes, he's actively shaping them. As a lawyer, politician, writer, spiritist leader, the whole deal.
It makes you wonder, was he influenced by those forces or was he influencing them? Probably a bit of both, right?
Totally, like a feedback loop. The individual and society, each shaping the other. And the remarkable thing is, Bittencourt Sampaio, he wasn't an emperor or a general, but he still made his mark on both the political and spiritual landscape of Brazil.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just made by the big names, the ones we all remember from school. It's also shaped by individuals like Bittencourt Sampaio, who, through their passions, helped to evolve ideas and beliefs that changed society.
Absolutely. His story really shows us how one life can make a difference. Even if that difference isn't always obvious or celebrated, he was a bridge between eras, embracing change and pushing boundaries in ways that we can still see today, especially within the Brazilian Spiritist community.
And to think, it all started with a law school anthem. Who knew those lyrics, that collaboration with a famous composer, would be the first step in such an incredible journey?
Right. Goes to show, sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most fascinating places. Even amidst all the chaos of history, individuals like Bittencourt Sampaio can have an impact that lasts far beyond their lifetime.
So next time you hear the name Bittencourt Sampaio, remember, this isn't just some name in a textbook. This was a man who lived a life full of passion, intellectual curiosity, and a true commitment to making Brazil a better place, both politically and spiritually.
Yeah, his story really highlights how important it is to dig a little deeper, look beyond the surface and uncover those hidden stories, those figures who helped shape the world we live in.
That's what we try to do with these deep dives, right? Open up new perspectives, spark that curiosity, and encourage everyone to keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep uncovering those hidden connections that bind us all together. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.